Hi folks, and welcome to Gersnet, the Independent Rangers podcast, YouTube channel, website and all-round social media empire by Rangers fans, for Rangers fans, where all your content's absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. My name's Alec Anderson and we're recording this special World Cup bonus episode on the evening of Tuesday the 29th of November 2022, 150 years and 24 hours before Scotland played England in the world's first ever international football match, which took place not 15 minutes from where I'm sitting at the West of Scotland cricket ground, where you get a pint in the super staunch stumps on Peel Street, and Rangers would play their first Scottish Cup final 5 years later. International football carried on after that to the point where India were banned from the 1950 World Cup finals because they had no boots. Cameroon, as we know, played at the 2002 World Cup finals with no sleeves. And when Gianni Infantino last week said that he knew what it felt like to be gay, disabled and a migrant worker, we knew he had absolutely no shame. And after my first soporific turn in the host share, I'll demonstrate the same lack of shame by cruising on here and continuing to be a host, despite, like Gianni, being absolutely terrible at my job, as Baldy ex-Gingers have to stick together, Gianni, yeah. But all seriousness, it's going to be a quite an intellectual programme tonight. We're going to be discussing the very notion of nationhood itself. Is it just a social construct? You know, why is Gianni Infantino asking us to put politics aside when arbitrary lines drawn on a map are the very reason that we have nations to take part in his World Cup? We'll be employing the Hegelian dialectic, wondering if Qatar is the thesis and Western liberal democracy is the antithesis. Is this World Cup the synthesis, which is going to bring us all a new moral harmony in the globe? And more importantly than that, we'll be asking who's the biggest douchebag in these adverts on STV at half-time in the games. I think it's the guy who's getting that Aston Martin and driving into the desert, and he's wearing like a pilot's jacket with a furry collar in the desert, mate. I don't even know what it's for. He's pointing to stuff like a catalogue model, you know. He's a bit of an idiot. And then you've got Gerard Butler, who's demonstrating that there's a pair of shoes out there that look absolutely ridiculous, no matter what situation you wear them in. His choice. Brian, what do you think yourself? These adverts are absolutely terrible, aren't they? What's happening there?
They're pretty terrible. The one that caught my eye personally was the one that involved a different Gerard, and that was our ex-manager, Stephen Gerrard. I was a bit surprised to see him pop up in an advert, but nonetheless, they're all pretty poor.
Aye, Kevin Bacon. I thought we're supposed to hate Kevin Bacon, but I think he's doing all right in the EE adverts, you know, and I know that it's for EE, you know, whereas like, Zidane, he's the other end of the scale. You know, it doesn't matter what, I don't know what he's actually selling. I think it's a perfume and an aftershave or something. It could be cat's pee. It's Zidane selling it. I'll buy it. I want it for Christmas. Just get me the Zizou thing. You know, man's cool as anything. So yeah, folks, we'll be talking about strips. We'll be talking about best goals of the tournament. We'll be talking about why the second round was so much better than the first round, and who we fancy to do the business in qualifying for the knockout stages of this World Cup. And I'm delighted to say, to assist me in this enterprise, the man who makes it all happen behind the scenes and provides a sensible chat when we're online, Mr. Brian Archer. Brian, how you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well. I don't know about sensible chat, but I'll try my best.
Well, compared to me, anyway, Brian, it's pretty sensible what Henry's got to say compared to old Mouthy here. But it is Gersnet. We're going to do exactly what it says in the tin for once. Michael Beale, the Beale reveal. You know, we've extracted the Michael from Loftus Road. We've taken the mic from QPR. Brian, the QPR fans are raging. How you feeling about it? You absolutely Bealing, or are you walking with your feet 10 feet off the Beale? That'll days with the Beale puns, I think.
To be honest, the more I kind of think about it, the more excited I get. I wasn't really sure about it at first when it was first rumoured. I kind of thought, is it a bit of the easy choice? Then I kind of got a bit intrigued by it and thinking, well, you know, he's probably not going to be a complete carbon copy of Gerrard, so I'm quite interested to see how he puts his own spin on it. I seen somebody on Twitter say they felt galvanised by it, and especially by reading these comments that he's things he's been saying in the press since he got appointed, and I've got to say that's a pretty good word. I'm going to steal that. I feel pretty galvanised by it myself.
Exactly. I know that's a good way of putting it. It's really he's been talking in his first presser about taking the handbrake off, you know, and playing football, you know, that's kind of more entertaining, and he wants to win, but he wants to do it in a way that excites us, and he wants to do training in a way that excites the players. Is that something that excites you or kind of worries you?
No, it definitely excites me. You know, let's be honest, at this moment in time, what he says, you can kind of only take so much from it. The proof's going to be in the pudding in terms of what he produces on the park and kind of what we see in a match day. Hopefully he's true to his word and he takes the handbrake off. I think that's what we've all been wanting, is to see the team play with a bit more freedom, a bit more style, just to see like they're enjoying their football again. I think towards the end under Gio there, it really felt like the players weren't enjoying their football, and that's something you never want to see from your team. So hopefully he's true to his word and he gets the players playing with a bit of freedom and a bit of style and just excites the fans again.
I know. I think it's something I've been saying to Colin and other guys when we're doing the pods all through this kind of tough period under Gio. I'm never bothered if I don't understand, the identity of the team. This has become a big topic of conversation. This team has no identity. We don't know what they're trying to do. It doesn't bother me if I don't know what we're trying to do. It's just, if the players need to know what they're trying to do. And I have to be honest, I couldn't give a monkeys about the style. There's a Graham Greene line, the great kind of novelist writer. He talks about, there's always people talking about character versus plot, when it comes to writing a book. And he says, well, character is plot. And I always feel that, winning is style when it comes to football. When it comes to any sport, just to keep winning, is the hardest thing to do in any sport. And it gets to a point where even if you're grinding out grim 1-0s, if you're doing them, 9 or 10 in a row, then it becomes an art form, and it is entertaining to watch in itself. But I must admit, I'm a bit kind of, I'm not saying underwhelmed. It's I think it's, apart from anything else, it's just been kind of so slowly obvious. Suddenly Gio was in trouble, and then it became inevitable that he was going to get sacked. And kind of segueing with that, it was suddenly Michael Beale was going to be the manager, and he gets appointed. And I know the QPR fans feel kind of betrayed, by what's happened. And that's nice for us, because we were the ones feeling betrayed a year ago when Stevie G took Beale down to Aston Villa. So he owes a League Cup semi-final. Michael, that's your first thing you need to give us. That's coming up in January. But do you think the way he's left QPR, these assurances he made them about loyalty and what have you, the things that QPR fans will make a big deal about, the way he kind of he was kind of Banco's ghost at the feast at that Aberdeen game recently, when Gio's people took that as some kind of briefing against Gio, almost kind of getting him sacked at the job, knowing that he was available as a prisoner. Does that kind of behaviour worry you? Or is it just a sign that Michael Beale's really determined to get what he wants?
Honestly, it doesn't worry me, because not too much longer than a year ago we were on the other end of that in terms of Gerrard leaving at the drop of a hat. And I don't honestly think the visit of Michael Beale, a couple of weeks ago, was anything sinister behind that. I know people might say that there was, and that Gio might feel a bit put off by it, but I honestly don't think there was anything sinister behind it. I don't think he knew then that he was potentially going to be in for this job. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm being too naive, but I don't think there was anything sinister behind it. And to be honest, for me, the way I look at it is that true loyalty doesn't really exist in football anymore. We're not going to get a Walter Smith that's going to stay here for 10 years the way he did in the 90s. That just doesn't happen anymore. If a manager comes here and does well, they'll be off down south, as we've seen with Gerrard. And if they don't do well, the reality is at Rangers that you won't be here very long. And that's just the bread and butter of it, to be honest. Managers aren't going to come to Rangers anymore and stay, for 6 to 10 years. It just doesn't happen. The fact we've only had 18 managers in 151 years history is quite incredible, to be honest, but I don't think it'll stay like that for the next 150 years.
Aye, yeah, that's it. I think there's people have been kind of looking at it as a strange version of the kind of succession model that was set almost by Souness and then Walter Smith. And it's almost like it's had a year's interruption with Gio, but we've interrupted like the European Cup winning captain from Anfield, made his name at Anfield as a player, comes into Rangers as a manager when we've been struggling for best part of a decade, lifts us up with the bootstraps, and then his assistant kind of takes over. It's just been interrupted by the fact that Beale went to Villa with Gerrard. But I think there's also the kind of Willie Waddle, Jock Wallace going back a bit earlier. Willie Waddle again. I mean, like Gio, he took us to the European final. He won the European final, but he didn't actually win the league, Willie Waddle, but he set in motion the Jock Wallace years of winning, like 2 trebles in the space of 3 seasons and that, because Jock Wallace was his assistant and he brought him through. I'm just worrying that with Beale coming in the way he has, people are expecting that we're maybe got another Walter Smith. And I'm not sure that that's, or maybe even another Jock Wallace. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think he's got a lot to prove. He's still really early doors in being a manager of his own team, but he's making noises about this style of football he's got to play. What do you think his actual targets are for this season? Is it too late? Is the league a bogey, and we're just using this as a kind of transition season? Or are we expecting more?
For me, I'm never going to concede the league. It does look to be a difficult task. I'm never going to concede it. I don't think we should ever do that at Rangers. But it does look to be, it will prove difficult. For me, his goals for the rest of this season is at least one trophy, be that the Scottish Cup or the League Cup, preferably both. And he has to, at the very minimum, he has to reduce that gap to Celtic. It cannot get any wider, and we need to see meaningful progress on the park, and preferably we need to be beating Celtic and getting back to the days under Gerrard when we seem to have Celtic's number. Gerrard went, a good number of games without losing it then, and I think we need to get back to that. But I'm never going to concede the league, but I will admit that it does look to be an uphill battle.
And I think for me it's something I didn't know. So I was talking to Colin doing a wee pod last week on Gio's departure, and when Beale was already the front runner. It was kind of, I didn't realise he was so attached to Scotland as a place to live. And it's like, I think we went from a strange situation where we were taking it as it was going to be impossible that we could get Michael Beale when he was doing so well at QPR, and Wolves were in for him. You're thinking we can't outspend Premier League clubs. And then, QPR's form fell through the floor. And suddenly he was available, and we felt maybe, I think a few fans out there felt a bit kind of, we've got a cheaper option. But I think in between, it's somewhere in between that, and Beale, his desire to come back to Rangers, that's a massive thing for me. This job is so difficult. You need to have, a real desire to be, you need to enjoy the kind of, the almost insanity of it. As I was saying to Colin, if you don't win every game 3-0, you're going to get slagged by your own supporters. Yeah. And I think Beale's definitely got that. I think he must love Scotland as a place to stay. And he's young enough. I think you also need to have enough youth about you. People are wanting experienced managers, but I think you need to be young and have something to prove, to kind of take what's coming at you. You have that kind of thirst for success. And one of the things I find kind of most encouraging about Michael Beale's, also the thing I think makes most worrying about him, is that there's something in his eyes. He looks slightly deranged. And that can be it can be deranged in the, I need to win everything all the time, and I'll kill you if you don't go along with that. That's fine by me. I'm just worried if he's too much of a kind of idealist, and maybe he gets caught up, But for me, no, the guy seems to, he wants the job. He's definitely proven in the technical side of things as a coach, he's absolutely fantastic. I think that there's various glowing testimonials for him going on this week in various parts of the media. He seems to know what he's doing. I also think the board, Gio was struggling for a wee while there, and it was just like he gets sacked last Monday, and then within a week and a few hours, we've got a new manager in place. For all the criticism the board have been taking, do you think they've handled this pretty smoothly?
They seem to have, yeah. They seem to have acted decisively, which is the one thing I wanted. The one thing I didn't want to see happen when they sacked Gio last week was that this was going to be a long, drawn-out process. That was the one thing we didn't need, where you've got name after name being linked, and then nothing being appointed, and then kind of similar to what happened when they ended up appointing Graham Murray, was that they couldn't get their main man and they gave it to Graham Murray at the time. You didn't want a situation like that again, where they struggle to get their main man and then it just becomes weeks and weeks of rumour and speculation. So they seem to have known who they wanted right from the start. They did say in the statement they've kind of looked at other candidates and potentially interviewed other candidates, which is good that they've kind of cast their net a bit wider, but I think they've always known who their number one target was, and they've went and got him. And for me, that's exactly what you want when you need that kind of swift managerial change. And that seems to be what they've done. Beale said when he left with Gerrard last year that he would love to come back and do it all again, and he's got that opportunity. And I think he's got a real hunger about him, that he wants to come and do this. I don't think he would have left for many other clubs, because I do think he was committed to QPR. I'll be honest, I don't think, I know their fans will be upset by him leaving, but I do think he was committed to them. But I also think he'd been upfront with them and told them that, look, if Glasgow Rangers comes in, that's a job I can't turn down. And I think he's always been fairly open about that. Similar in the way that Gerrard was pretty open with us, that if Liverpool ever came in for him, he would be off. Now, obviously, Gerrard ended up taking the Aston Villa job, and that's fair enough. He's entitled to do that. But no, I do think that Beale's proven that he wants the job. He's got the job now, and now it's just all about what he does on the park.
Aye, I think there was shades of, I mean, it's ridiculous to be talking about in the same breath as Walter Smith, but there was definitely shades of Walter when he was in the Scotland job. There was only one job that was going to take him away from that, and I do like that. I think that's always a good thing when, the manager desperately wants to be at Rangers. Also, if he's using us as a stepping stone, I've said this with Gerrard, I've said this with Gio as well, that's absolutely fine by me. If we're all up in arms because, Chelsea or Manchester United have come in to take him off us, in a year's time, then he must have done a hell of a job. So that's the way we benefit,
Yeah, I think that's how we've got to look at it now, that probably most managers are going to come up here and use Rangers or Celtic for that matter as a stepping stone. But if that's the way they look at it, then the way you've got to look at it is that, if they're doing that and they get taken away by a club in the Premier League, that means they've won, a good number of trophies here, and that can only be a positive thing.
Absolutely. And we'll have more pods out, guys, discussing obviously the new Rangers manager, Michael Beale, in much more detail. But this is a World Cup bonus pod. And as promised, I'm now going to talk about a tournament which, other than Graham Souness and Sonia Luko's sister being pundits, and Ali McCoyston co-coms, and Tom Miller, substitute, Clive Tilsley as commentator, has got absolutely nothing to do with Rangers. I know we'll get Borna's on the bench for Croatia, being replaced by another Borna, and Jason Cummings has played against the world Humdog played against France in the World Cup finals. Whoever thought we'd see that? But I think it's one of those ones people are still thinking, why would you want to do a podcast about the World Cup on Gersnet, especially a World Cup that's been kind of basically 12 years of criminality? Yes, we want to provide content for our 6,000 YouTube subscribers, but why can we not just talk about, our favourite films, like Hot Tub Time Machine, or, the best kind of albums out there, Rubber Soul, OK Computer, Closer, or the greatest hits of Daniel O'Donnell. That's my personal favourite. But it's one of these things, folks. I think ITV last night touched on it. They did a lovely piece on the Cruyff turn, in their kind of preamble to Uruguay against Portugal. And they didn't go far enough for me, because I think the big thing that's been spoken about by the prime ministers of the last few months, trickle down. I think every World Cup has this massive trickle down effect on the rest of the game. Every World Cup is absolutely vital to Rangers and to every other supporter, player, football club on the planet, as far as I'm concerned anyway, speaking personally. I think the oldest anecdote I remember, the oldest kind of joke I remember in football circles is the one about the guy has a head injury on the park, usually a juniors game, a kind of non-league game, and the trainer goes on, and the fella's concussed, and he turns around and the trainer shouts at the bench, he doesn't know who he is, and the manager shouts back, well, tell him he's Pele and put him up front. And the whole thing is, as bad a joke as that is, it was told to me by people of your grandparents' age who would never have, there was no live football on the telly, didn't even have tellies. How did they know about Pele? They knew about him because he was a 17-year-old boy who'd scored 2 goals in the 1958 World Cup final, and come back in 62 and 66, and then the legends that come, the legends that are spread, they're forged in the white hot heat of the World Cup finals. I grew up, it was Maradona. He should have played in 78. He was bitter about that until he died. Didn't get picked for the 78 World Cup. He'd been capped before that. He goes to Spain 82, and you see him growing up in front of your very eyes, by getting himself sent off and not really able to handle the pressure. He turns up in 1986 and he wins the World Cup basically on his own, as close as you'll ever get to anybody doing that, because he's learned how to do it. And as he's getting towards the back end of his career, he drags Argentina to another final in 1990, and that's why I know he's the greatest player of all time for what he's achieved. Until Ronaldo or Messi win a World Cup, I know, and the guys my age know, they can't rival him as being the greatest player of all time. And I thought, last night I just watched that little article. I'm sorry to go on here, but I think it bears saying. I watched a little piece on ITV about the Cruyff turn, and it was the things they didn't mention. They didn't mention, well, first of all, it was the Westfalen Stadium in Dortmund, which, well, Rangers, this is an example of how it affects us all. Rangers, Willie Waddle based the rebuilding of Ibrox on the Westfalen. He modelled Ibrox, would be sitting just now on the Westfalen Stadium. Johan Cruyff, Colin Armstrong's got a great article on his blog about how he came to Ibrox and played in the first ever Super Cup final, the year prior, and he laid on those skills. Janne Olsen, the guy, he turns inside out. Nobody actually mentioned the fact that it was a 0-0 draw. That game between the Netherlands and Sweden, and the second round of games in the 1974 World Cup was actually a draw. It ended in 0-0. And Ørjan Persson, former Rangers player at that point. He played for Rangers in the late 60s up to the 70s. He came on later on after the turn had taken place, but he came on later on in that game. And earlier this year, when I watched Ryan Kent doing a mini Cruyff turn on, and I hope that the cameras have been switched around. I hope the cameras at the Westfalen some point in the last 50 or 48 years have actually switched stands so that Ryan Kent performed his little Cruyff turn in the exact same corner as Cruyff did, not the one opposite. And part of the reason it was so beautiful the way he teed up John Lundstrom for that lovely third goal we scored in Dortmund, that iconic third goal we scored in Dortmund. He's performing a Cruyff turn in the stadium where the Cruyff turn was first publicised. He actually did it in the 72 European Cup final against Inter Milan as well, but nobody knows that. It was absolutely magical because he was also turning a World Cup winning defender inside out in Mats Hummels. And it was the fact that this guy has won the World Cup and look what Ryan Kent is doing to him that made that such a magical moment for us. And it's be things like that. The Cruyff turn, I have to say, I am the world's worst footballer, even though I was a young and thin guy. But the one thing I could do, having watched videos of World Cups, was do a Cruyff turn. The strips they're wearing, are Adidas, basic Adidas. My first World Cup I remember was 1978, and I loved those. I loved those strips. I loved the three stripes, the basic, the lovely cut strips. And if you look closely at Johan Cruyff's strip, you'll see there is only two stripes on his socks, on his shorts, on his shirt. I think that's the first. We're talking about a World Cup ground just now where players can't seemingly protest for the risk of a booking. Here was a man who was protesting against the fact he had a contract with Puma and they were making him wear Adidas gear. You should have a close look at that. You see it on YouTube, the Cruyff turn, and look at the stripes on his shirt. He did it for every game in that World Cup. He took a single stripe off his shirt. So there's a bit of politics in there as well. But for me as a kid, that was the skill. The only skill I could actually perform at the football was the Cruyff turn, and it worked well for a big slow coach, kind of two left feeters type like myself. So folks, the World Cup means absolutely everything to us. It means everything to me. It has this kind of massive trickle down effect. And one of the things in this World Cup that may actually have a bit of a trickle down effect is the amount of injury time that's been played. Brian, it seems to be been absolutely off the scale. We're getting games that are actually lasting like 100 minutes. Have you been enjoying that, getting an extra bit of football?
I have been, to be honest, and it's actually made me think. There was a game last season, I think it was Rangers against Motherwell. I think it was the one we drew, one each day, scored late on. But I think the ball was only in play for something ridiculous, like 43 minutes. And it made me wonder, how long would that game have went on if we had this kind of injury time in that game? And I hope it does come into the kind of club game, to be honest, because I think it's right that, the fans get their kind of money's worth in terms of the ball actually being in play. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a positive, and I hope it's here to stay.
Well, I think they're saying, and this is what I'm talking about with trickle down. UEFA have done this as well. I'm sure UEFA launched the back pass rule at Euro 92. I might be misremembering that. Forgive me if I am, but they have this thing of using the biggest tournaments on the planet to actually launch directives, rule changes, protocols that they're then going to put out into the into the club scene for the following seasons. And I'm wondering, like you say, I don't know if it's going to actually start doing this in the club game, because it's going to cause so much controversy. And it's like in our league. If Celtic are, if we end up, equalising against Celtic in the 101st minute or something like that, it's going to be hell to pay. But you actually got a situation yesterday where in two of the games, Serbia became the first team ever to score 2 first-half injury time goals, because there have been 6 minutes of injury time added to the first half. And apparently it's not just because of the VAR. They're trying to make up for the fact that the VAR has taken so much time out of the kind of, the 45 minutes to 90 minutes of the game. They're also, apparently, they're now going to stop the clock for celebrations, And we then had Paulo Bento, the Portugal manager, on the park getting sent off because his team, South Korea, hadn't been allowed to take a corner in the 101st minute. So you've set a precedent there. Do you think it's actually going to end up it's going to cause more rammies than it gives benefits?
It possibly will if clubs are scoring goals in the 101st minute. But I'm all for it, to be honest. I'm here for that kind of thing. I'm all for it. Let's have it.
It's a Cameroon, the Cameroon Serbia game was a great game. Ends up a 3-3 draw, and apparently it was because of the celebrations when Cameroon scored. I think they were just so delighted because they'd lost their first game 1-0. they took the lead in the first half, and other substitutes ran onto the park as well. So the Serbians, being the kind of bitter bams that they are, I love the Serbians, they're so angry all the time. When they equalised, just as the reports, all their subs went on. But the referees then get time to score a second goal before half time because the referees added on time for their subs invading the pitch. So the idea that this is going to solve any controversy is I think it's just going to create even more. If you're chasing like a winner and you get an equaliser, just get everybody on the park, and you're going to get an extra 5 minutes to get your winner. You know, it's absolutely mad. But the second round, you called it on Friday, mate. We said that the first round of games, there was kind of 4-0 nils. The football was pretty basic. No red cards in the first round. But you said on Friday night you thought things start spicing up in the second round of games. And sure enough, that's what's happened. We had a red card in the very first second round game. Wayne Hennessy getting sent off for Wales, the Welsh goalkeeper. And the matches, they seem to have... Still a few brutal first halves, but the matches seem to have taken off. You've been enjoying it?
I've been, yeah. I think the teams have seemed to relaxed a bit more and playing a bit more of their kind of natural game. Possibly they're getting used to the conditions as well. So it's definitely made for a more kind of open, more entertaining games at times. So yeah, been enjoying it. Hoping to see more goals. Hopefully that continues and it makes for a really good rest of the tournament. I think Hennessy was lucky it was only a red card that he got after that kind of supposed challenge.
I know. That's the thing. It was like the first decision was a yellow cards. I think we're seeing VAR. How you're starting. It's been taking me a while to try and work out what's in the minds of referees and linesmen. They seem to, they're playing knowing that VAR is in effect, and I think that's one of the classic instances where you see. I think any other time a referee would have made that a red card straight away, but he's thinking, I'll give it a yellow because that's one of the things that VAR can upgrade. One of the things they can change if possible. But he was kind of going there with the knees and everything, wasn't he?
Yeah, it's one of those ones for me. If you do that in a Friday night in Glasgow City Centre, you're spending the weekend at Her Majesty's pleasure. His Majesty's pleasure.
God knows what happened to you in Iran, a night in Tehran. But I felt terrible for the Welsh. I felt, we are Celtic brothers, may know what to say that on Gersnet, but I did actually feel a bit sorry for them. I do want Wales to go through. We're up against it now. We're recording this before they actually take on England. But I think Iran, what they've been doing, what's happening in their country politically, and I thought it was an incredibly emotional game. And then you have an instance where I think it was like 98 minutes and 101 minutes or something, they got their 2 goals, and it really was. It was proper exciting. It was proper dramatic. Out of the 32 teams taking part, I think only 6 have recorded the same result. I don't mean the scoreline, the actual win, lose or draw. They've only 6 have recorded the same result in their first 2 games. So you're looking at France, I think Brazil have won their first 2 games, and they're kind of in amongst the favourites. Portugal have won their first 2 games, quite difficult games, and they're doing their usual kind of dark horse thing. Canada and Qatar, they're out, basically after losing their first 2 games. Does this mean it's a really predictable World Cup? Does it indicate a really open tournament?
I don't know if I can say it's predictable, given that we have seen a good number of shocks in terms of Saudi Arabia beating Argentina, Japan beating Germany. I would classify Iran beating Wales as a shock. I personally didn't expect that. I thought Wales would win that. I actually thought Wales would qualify from this group. So it's a bit of a surprise to see them. I think after tonight, I can't see them qualifying, because I think for them to qualify, they would need to beat England by 4 clear goals. And they need the result in the other game to go in their favour. So it looks very unlikely. I think they're a squad that's a bit over the hill, which is possibly a theme as well. This World Cup, there's some of the squads that look a bit tired and a bit just maybe past their peak. I'm thinking Belgium certainly is the number 2 ranked team in FIFA for some reason, somehow. But, their results changed, but their form didn't. They were terrible against Canada, but won. And they were, they got everything they deserved the other night against Morocco, didn't they? Yeah, I was disappointed that Canada haven't managed to pull off a couple of results. I've been impressed with kind of elements of their play. I quite like their manager. He seems to just say what he thinks, and there's absolutely no filter there. He just kind of comes out with it and doesn't really bother about who he upsets, which is quite nice to see.
When Gio was in line for the sacking, I was, we're looking at candidates. I'm thinking, I'd like to see how this Canadian fella gets on. He's for Derby, isn't he? He's an English fella. I thought maybe he could be a candidate, but having heard them talking, I mean, very positive, but I throw that into the Old Firm environment, it's just going to be war, isn't it? He's just he's just going for it. He upset the Croats as well, but I like to say he's good value, and I think that's one of the things. Croatia, like Canada took the lead against them, and then Croatia come back and they're winning before half time. Next day, it's almost like that Croat-Serbia rivalry. They're a goal down to Cameroon, and they come back. They're 2-1 up at half time, and it's just these have been the kind of games that have been kind of lighting up the second round. You know, I've really been enjoying it. And another one of the trends, one of these things that's kind of starting this World Cup, with the guys wearing face masks. You know, Son, South Korea, he's wearing a face mask. Shaqiri, the number 17, I think, for Tunisia, perhaps, he was wearing a face mask, and Gvardiol of Croatia's wearing the old face mask, and Martin Keown was having a go at them, saying, you just get out there and go on, mate, don't bother with this protective gear. But in that line, the thing I've really noticed is players celebrating tackles. This seems to become a big thing at this World Cup. Guys, you know, getting a tackle in early doors, usually a pretty clean one. Or in Valverde's case against South Korea, kind of late on. Winning the tackle, then getting up and kind of pumping the fists and going to the crowd and all that. Is that something you approve of? But I feel like World Cups are kind of a bit foreign cultures, but I find that a bit kind of weird. How you think about it?
I'll be honest, until I'd seen you mention it in the agenda earlier, I wasn't actually hugely aware of it. It's not something I paid a huge amount of attention to, but to be honest, I'm all for it. I think we know from Ibrox, certainly one of the things that gets the crowd off their feet other than a goal is a good crunching tackle, especially in an Old Firm game. An early crunching tackle is something that'll get the crowd off their feet, so I'm all for it. The other thing that, going a bit off topic, that I like to see is when a team gets a corner and they start kind of cheering on the fans. I think I need more of that, as well as the celebrating the tackles.
That's it. Just get things going, especially in these stadiums. A lot of them are kind of, there's big gaps in the crowd. They're not being sold out. So I suppose if it gets them going, that's a good thing. I thought Andy Halliday,
yes,
Hogmanay 2018, basically the tackle that set 55 in motion. Took another couple of years, but that kind of got it going. I suppose so. I was thinking about it negatively. I was thinking more like kind of Fabio Cardoso. I remember him celebrating a few tackles once, and me thinking, mate, at Rangers, you don't celebrate tackles. You just, especially if you're a centre half, it's your job kind of thing, But what is it? Matondo, the guy of Qatar, he celebrated one in the first few minutes when Qatar were playing Senegal. He won a wee tackle. I think he's the only one though that ended up in the losing team. We got Aaron Moy, who's playing for the wrong club now. He did one in the first, the last minute for Australia against Tunisia. And there's a guy, Laidouni of Tunisia, who's a fantastic big player. He's all over the place. I know a lot of folks fancy him for Rangers, but he did in the first few minutes against Denmark, and he ended up getting a 0-0 Tunisia, and it set him in their way, playing really well in that game. But you also had Darwin Núñez of Uruguay last night celebrating getting tackled against Portugal in the first 5 minutes. I think it won him a corner or something like that. But he's up and he's kicking the advertising hoardings and Valverde did it against South Korea, celebrating a tackle. And then you've got Darwin Núñez celebrating getting tackle. So Uruguay don't have any goals, but they really know how to celebrate a tackle.
they might just want something to celebrate. They've not had any goals to celebrate.
Exactly.
Any excuse to celebrate. It seems like.
I'm starting to wonder. It was the fellow Schlotterbeck, who plays for Germany, against Spain on Sunday night. I was watching that one, and it's one each. It was really tight, and he had a tackle in his own box in the last minute, and he gets up and celebrates it, and that made me think. Is it actually as much about fooling the referee? If you get up and celebrate the tackle, it's a way of saying, "Oh, it's clean. It's a great tackle," I
never actually thought about that, but that's a good point. I do think there's a time to celebrate a tackle. I don't mind it if it's in the dying minutes and you're trying to see out a game. Celebrating a tackle in the opening stages, I'm not quite for that, to be honest. The other thing I thought about is they might not want to celebrate a tackle if it goes out for a corner. They might not celebrate it because that might tell the referee that they've got the last touch.
I know.
So you kind of wonder if you think about all that, but it's an interesting development of the tournament nonetheless.
Aye, because we've got Alan McGregor, obviously famous for making world-class saves and then not responding and then not celebrating anyway because all he wants is a bye kick. Just don't want
anybody to know. Not to take credit for any saves that he makes because
exactly. True class. That's some true class. Yeah. Another trend, which is I think it becomes a trend within every World Cup. Is one that I'm always kind of fascinated by. It's probably my favourite trend after the who's going to win the Golden Boot is team kits. Who's wearing what. I usually look at what manufacturers doing well or Nike get better kits than Puma and how's Adidas getting on. that kind of thing. I know in the iconography of World Cups, especially like you think of the Brazil kit, everybody knows what the Brazil kit looks like. It was a big part of kind of covering up the criminality of FIFA. You know, that's if people are watching the kits, they're not thinking about what's going on behind the scenes. I think if you go back to the '54 World Cup, you've got Scotland losing their first game 1-0 to Austria, losing their second game 7-0 to Uruguay, who were the holders. But part of that was they were playing in roasting heat in Basel, and they still had their old woolen 1950s style Scotland jerseys. They didn't have a thin kit, didn't have a a kind of weather appropriate top, whereas Uruguay did. They're used to playing in that kind of heat. So they can actually affect your performance. But as a supporter watching them, do you enjoy looking at the strips and what teams are wearing what, Brian?
I'll be honest, it's not something I'm really focused on. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a kit nerd, so my knowledge on this is far less than yours. In terms of like good kits or bad kits, for me, the Brazil one is always iconic. You think of the World Cup and you think of instantly Brazil. They are for me like the kings of the World Cup because they've won it so many times, and we all know about they can all rhyme off the legendary players over the years. So that's always an iconic one. Again, Argentina, another iconic one for me. I just like that kind of simplicity of that kit. Spain for me, just because kind of my age in terms of their dominance from 2008 to 2012. So that's another kind of iconic one for me, just because that was in terms of how dominant they were during that period. And then another one I picked up, I'm not sure whether I would put this in the worst or the best. I don't know if you remember the Nigeria one of 2018. It was kind of the lime green zigzag one.
You really
I'm
need
not
to
sure
be
whether
bold.
that would, yeah.
To carry that off, you really need to be, a pretty decent footballer, don't you?
Yeah, I think it would. You would need to be bold to be walking about wearing that, to be honest.
It's become part of the Nigerian identity, though. Their kits are always they're bothering on the wild, glowing green, and it ends up being, it's one of those kits you think, I would look terrible in most things, but you're kind of normal Scottish footballer wouldn't be able to carry it off, but it looks absolutely fantastic on Nigeria because it's such a part of their identity of that team as well, like Brazil. And I think the kind of test for this was when Hamilton Accies, oh god, it could be about 10 years back. I don't know, the years fly when you get to my age, but they had the Argentina strip and the Brazil strip
So
as
they
their away
did.
kit.
So they did.
The boys just
yeah.
didn't look quite the same as Chorizo and Zico and Falcao and these kind of guys. Argentina, this is the first World Cup I remember, 1978. It was all Adidas kits. It was real kit buffs. I'm just a bit of a tourist. Real kit buffs decry that World Cup because they were all just wearing the same kind of template, Adidas template. Apart from Mexico, who had a Levi's kit. Their kit was sponsored by Levi's. That was an absolute cracker. Scotland obviously were an umbro in that World Cup. But for me, I actually love the basic 3 stripes and then just your colours. And the Argentina kit in that final, that's probably I think made the Argentina kit my kind of basic favourite when it comes to World Cup. I think Germany have absolutely ruined theirs in this World Cup. The nice white, black, I don't, I know they had the lovely German flag kind of design on their iconic 1990 strip when they won it in 1990, but they've this big black band, they've got big stripe they've got down the middle. I think it's really quite ugly. Spain, funny you mentioned Spain. That's my biggest bugbear when it comes to kits, because Spain used to be the most beautiful kit in the world when I was a boy. They ruined it by going with these kind of self-coloured socks and shorts, kind of reddy blue. They're going all red at times. They're going, these kind of lighter blue socks. It used to have lovely satiny, just deep red shirts, the glowing light blue shorts. And then they had the black socks, all black socks with just a little Spanish flag on the kind of fold. Absolutely tremendous. But my favourite World Cup kit of all time, nobody's asking, but I'm just going to tell them anyway. Algeria, 1982. My barber's actually Algeria. Yes, I do still use a barber, believe it or not. Just try to keep folk in a job. My barber's actually Algerian, and that's how we bonded. I was talking about when Algeria beat Germany, West Germany in the 1982 World Cup. They had this kit that was just green on the top, green shorts, and red socks. I don't know if it's something to clash the red with the green, kind of mess with my Celtic hating thing. It was too good. It was just something kind of transgressive about it, really nice. And they had lovely big Arabic writing on the front of their kit, which I think was something to do. Just like, Algeria is fantastic. And what I didn't realise kit nerds will be able to tell you this, is they actually wore a different top the first half and the second half. They changed to a slightly different green and white home top, and it took me just the 30 years to notice that. So that's how much I notice about how much I know about kits. But I've been enjoying it. I thought Senegal's strip today, they were beating Ecuador, was pretty lovely. It's something I'll keep my eye on anyway. More important, we'll get back to basics here. Brian, you're watching this World Cup, you're seeing plenty of guys that you've never heard of before, doing the business or not doing the business. Do you see any possible January signings there for Rangers?
There was one player I had my eye on until he made two mistakes. It was the big Canada centre half. I think his name's Miller. He plays for Montreal. He did make the two mistakes the other night against Croatia to give away the two goals. But up until that point, I thought, this guy looks like a bit of a dominant centre half. I think we could do worse than look at him. He's the only one that's kind of stood out for Rangers. I think it was another Canada player, the boy, the number 11, Buchanan, but I think he plays for Bruges. I think he might be a bit outside our price range, and I think he'll have a few other clubs from kind of bigger leagues looking at him now, but he's done very well as well.
Aye, it's a weird one. I think is that the fellow that was stomping the grass?
Yes.
Aye, yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. He played quite well up until that point, but that game kind of pointed out for me a real kind of conundrum. Like you say, you're watching Buchanan, and he's going down and he's putting the ball in for Canada's first ever goal in the World Cup finals. Alphonse Davies putting it in, and you're thinking Canada's the kind of country they're not used to getting to World Cups. There'll be rich pickings there if anybody plays well. But as you say, the fella put the cross in, plays for Bruges, who are in the Champions League all the time, and the guy scoring the goals at Bayern Munich. He's a star in Germany, so we get no chance of holding him. Whereas one of the fellas that scored for Croatia is I think he's 29, 30 years old, and he plays up front for Hajduk Split.
Levaya,
yeah. So the country that's only in their second, scoring their first ever goal in the World Cup, we're never going to buy any off them. Whereas the country that was runners up in the last World Cup, there's a big fella playing for them that we could probably go and pick off. It's strange. Yeah. It's really weird, you know what I mean? But I'm at the stage, I just think with the World Cup in general, if they're performing this stage at all, the way Rangers are just now, the way the financial situation is, somebody else is going to get in there first who can, can afford these. But like I say, I think it's Lai Dooney, the fella's name is, that plays for Tunisia. He was impressing a lot of people, particularly the first game against Denmark. But Patrick Kasky, who we all know is a great kind of authority in these things, he'd been talking about him for a while, and almost, I think he was kind of pulling his hair out saying, we should have picked him up before this World Cup, because it's just a big, massive kind of advertisement for these kind of players. Somebody else will come in and get them. One last thing I'll ask you, Brian. Next round of fixtures, the final round of fixtures in the group stages. Who are you? What kind of fixtures are you looking forward to? But more importantly, how are you going to decide what one to watch, seeing as each group plays its final game simultaneously?
So in terms of the one to watch, I'm probably a bit bad for this. I tend to watch the bigger nations rather than the game that's got the most jeopardy on it. So I'll watch the Brazil, I'll watch Argentina, I'll watch Spain, even if the other games get more jeopardy on it. But a few of the interesting games I've picked out, Poland versus Argentina. I think Argentina probably still need a result to guarantee them going through. I think it'd be a massive shock if they went out at this stage, especially with it being Messi's last World Cup, so there's a bit of narrative around that. And a bit of jeopardy. Ghana versus Uruguay, purely because I hope that Suarez plays and we kind of get that kind of rivalry back. I did hear earlier on that Asamoah Gyan tried to declare himself fit for this World Cup. Apparently he was trying to make a bit of a comeback for this World Cup. So that would have been interesting.
Right, that's basically getting revenge for a game that took place 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I thought Suarez was hard done by that night. I must admit, I remember watching that, and the English commentators weren't too partial to him, and they were wanting Ghana to get into the semi-finals, the first Africans to get into the semi-finals. But I understood that. But it's like he's standing in the tunnel watching and celebrating the penalty getting missed. But you would want your teammate. To me, it's like if you get a red card and you get sent off, but you still care so much that even though you're not playing the next game, you're up there hoping that your team still do the business. That's a good teammate, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think the Ghanaians see it that way, did they?
Oh, I don't think so. I think they were. I think they'll be out for revenge. Put it that way. Yeah, I definitely think they'll have revenge on their mind. And then Australia versus Denmark, I think will be an interesting one, because I think Denmark have kind of flattered to deceive a bit. I think they were a few people's dark horses, but I don't think they've kind of played quite as well as some expected. They're definitely missing a top number 9. You feel like they're a real top number 9 away from being able to do something as a nation. You know, if Haaland was Danish, I think they would. They might be, you know, getting on a bit better. But I think that game will be interesting as well.
Aye. I'm assuming I actually liked it. It's the games of the Jeopardy, I must admit, but I do find that I've done the thing where I'll try and flick. You know, like I think ITV are doing it, or STV and ITV4, and the BBC. I think tonight the England Wales game is on BBC One, and then you've got Iran against the USA, which I kind of rematch '98. I mean, the politics behind that fixture, absolutely. You know, I've got worse or better, if anything. That's on BBC Two. I've done that thing where you try to flick between the two games and you end up watching neither of them. Every time you flick, you miss a goal in the other game. You know,
I've done the thing where you get like a second screen, like a tablet, and try and put one of the games on the tablet and then one of the games on the TV, and it's the same. You end up watching none of them. So usually I just kind of pick my game and stick to it, and I'll maybe keep an eye on. Usually they'll tell you the score from the other game, so I'll kind of keep an eye on it. But yeah,
I think it's a pity because, like yourself, I mean, I think Cameroon against Brazil will be a wonderful occasion. You know, it'll be a game you'd love to watch. But for me, Switzerland against Serbia, the rematch, you know, which is also because of Shaqiri and Xhaka, is Serbia against Kosovo, basically. And there's also been a bit of build-up. You know, the Serbs have been putting nasty flags up with the phrase "no surrender" on them in their dressing room. I just can't imagine supporting a team that goes about shouting about "no surrender." Can you, mate?
No, that's terrible. Things we don't like to see.
Exactly. I think we better leave it there. My partner's getting worse by the second. Listen, folks, thanks very much for watching. I don't know when you'll get to see this or if it'll be allowed to go out at all. But if it is by that time, you should also have a pod. Colin Armstrong and Stuart Weir are talking to Professor Brian Howison. About Professor Howison's brilliant book about Rangers' financial collapse and how we fought our way back. To be able to afford Michael Beale and half of the Tunisia squad in January. So have a look out for that. And so Brian and myself might be back for we're planning to do a wee review of the final round of group fixtures and a wee preview of the last 16. But until then, just to say thanks very much to Brian. Brian, have I gone on too much, mate?
No, not at all. It was a pleasure as always.
Some man, you'll be paid well for saying that, mate. I'll get a check off to you. And thanks to you guys for watching. I've been Alec Anderson. Thanks very much. Good night.